Guys, so decided to do something a little bit different for this one and record outside since it's such a nice, beautiful day. So we're going to be talking a little bit about World War One. So this is going to be the first of a 3-video series on World War One, and we're going to focus mostly on America's involvement in the war. So not looking as much at the big world history spectrum of World War One. However, it is important to know some of those causes and background as we get started talking about the war because they play such an important role. So as we get started talking about World War I, there are a couple key points that you need to remember. So the first is when the World War officially began in 1914, America's goal was to practice neutrality. So what this means is they're not going to get involved, right? They're saying this is Europe's war. We're going to stay out of it. We've got enough of our own problems to deal with. This is in the middle of the Progressive Era. Woodrow Wilson is trying to solve a lot of those problems, and he was very much opposed to war in general. And in fact, when he ran for re-election in 1916, his main campaign was he kept us out of the war, right? Like you see this little button down here, war in Europe, peace in America, God bless Wilson. Right? So Woodrow Wilson ran on this policy of keeping us out of the war. However, as 1918 and 1917 kind of progressed, that no longer really became an option. And America eventually did have to get involved in this conflict. So let's go back and start with the causes of the war, specifically looking at some of those world history causes. So the thing that you need to remember when you hear about World War I causes is Main. M-A-I-N. So the main causes or the long-term causes of the war. So those long-term causes are militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. So let's break down a little bit some of the problems with each of these. So first is militarism. So militarism is an arms race. Right? So basically what this means is all of the countries in Europe during the late 1800s and the very beginning of the 1900s had been building up their forces, right? A lot of it had been their naval forces. So think about it. If you're England, right? England's an island. They mostly have a big navy. They don't really have, a lot of infantry, so they needed an army. Well, then they see Germany over here. So if you look at Germany, very little of Germany is on a coast. But Germany starts building up their navy. So England starts thinking, well, wait a minute, why does Germany need a navy unless they're going to use it against another navy, right? So militarism is really going to make the countries a little bit nervous of each other, particularly England and Germany with their naval buildup. In terms of alliances, all of the countries in Europe had kind of decided that they wanted to sort of make these alliances behind everybody else's back. Right? So we had two main alliances during World War I. The first is the Triple Entente. So Entente is a French word, and if you can remember that, you can remember that France is in the Entente alliance, along with Great Britain and Russia. The Triple Alliance, or the other, that sometimes you'll hear it called the Axis powers, is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey, also known as the Ottoman Empire. Also, Italy was involved, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. However, once the war actually begins, Italy changes sides. They actually end up siding with the Triple Entente in April of 1915. So they kind of are a little bit sleazy, according to some people. But the thing to kind of keep in mind as you're looking at this is you can see that the Triple Alliance, they're all of the Central European countries, right? Then the Triple Entente are the ones that are surrounding those countries. And that's kind of the motivation behind it. But keep these alliances in mind because they're going to play a really big role in the immediate beginning of the war. So the next one we have is imperialism. So basically what's going on is these European colonies, or these European countries, as they're competing for colonies all over the world, that's going to make them mad at each other, right? So like, hey, I wanted that colony, I'm going to fight you over this colony, whatever. And then as other countries start to get more and more colonies, it makes them more powerful. So you see Great Britain up here, they've got all kinds of colonies. Are we afraid? No, we don't have to be because we're Great Britain and we have colonies all over the world. But of course, this is going to cause competition between countries like Germany, who maybe don't have as many colonies. Last but not least, we have nationalism. So nationalism is a little bit more than patriotism, right? So you think about patriotism being, patriotic to your country. That's sort of what nationalism is, except that it's not about your country, it's about your nation. And your nation might be different than your country. So your nation is really more of your ethnic group, right? And in a lot of these, especially these European countries that are huge, so go back really quickly, you look at the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's a huge empire, right? And within that empire are tons of different ethnic groups who want their own nation. Some of the different ethnic groups are the Poles, the Slavs, the Serbs, there are Italians, there's just a little bit of everybody, right? And they don't want to be ruled by Austria-Hungary, they want to be ruled by themselves. They want their own nation. And so as these sort of ethnic nationalist groups start to form, it's going to cause a lot more conflict in between these major empires, right? So the immediate causes deal a lot with this little peninsula here. This is the Balkan Peninsula, and it is in the southern part of Europe. And basically, there's this big crisis in the Balkans, right? So as you can kind of see, there are lots of different kind of countries down here, okay? A lot of these countries at this time were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. There is, however, some free countries, and one of them is Serbia. So Serbia, an independent country, is angry that Bosnia, this country right here, is annexed by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The people of Bosnia are mostly Serbian, and so Serbia says, hey, these guys should be able to form their own nationalist country. They shouldn't be part of Austria. So there is a Serbian terrorist organization known as the Black Hand. And they decide that what they're going to do to send a message that Bosnia should not have been annexed is that they're going to assassinate and target the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So Archduke Franz Ferdinand was kind of on this like goodwill tour of the Austrian Empire. He is not the ruler yet. He is the next in line to the throne. And he and his wife are in Sarajevo. So Sarajevo is the capital of Bosnia. And they're supposed to be kind of like making nice, letting people see them, kind of saying, hey, we're going to be great leaders. It's fine. While they were there, the Black Hand sets up this plan to assassinate him. He is assassinated by this guy right here, Gavrilo Princip. He fully admitted to the assassination. It was a big controversy all over Europe, right? And of course, Austria is angry. Their heir has just been murdered by this like little bitty Serbian group. Like, who are you, right? So this begins a sort of ripple effect, right? So Austria goes to Serbia and says, you got to take responsibility for this, right? Serbia says, well, we can't, like, we don't have any money. We can't pay you. You've already got the guy who did it. There's nothing really we can do, right? So Austria says, if you don't do this, we're going to go to war with you. Well, Serbia's ally was Russia. And Russia says, if you look at this little cartoon here, Serbia says, if you touch me, if Austria says, if you make a move, well, if you hit that little feller, Russia says, hey, Austria, if you pick on my little brother, I'm going to declare war on you. Well, then Germany comes back and says, hey, I'm allies with Austria. Russia, if you declare war on Austria, we're going to declare war on you. Well, France and Great Britain say, well, wait a minute, we're allies with Russia. So Germany, if you declare war on Russia, we're going to have to declare war on you. So everybody's getting pulled into this conflict because of who their allies are. And the war officially begins when Germany decides to take the first step by marching through the country of Belgium into France on July 28, 1914. And this is when Britain officially declares war on Germany, who declares war on France, who declares war on Russia and Austria, and this whole thing blows up, right? So if you look at this little political cartoon here, this is one of my favorites. Everybody's blaming everybody else for this war, right? Like England and Belgium or Russia are blaming Germany, or Russia's blaming Austria, Serbia's blaming Austria. Italy's just kind of standing in the background like, we're not involved, the pizza, right? You know, whatever. Eventually, like I said, they will eventually turn on their allies. But this all is really it doesn't matter, right? This should have been a small little conflict between Austria and Serbia, but it becomes this major world conflict. So the way you can kind of think of this is a powder keg, right? So you think about what a powder keg is. It's a barrel, usually a wooden barrel. It's full of gunpowder. Gunpowder is very explosive, but it's not going to blow up unless it gets a spark, right? So inside the powder keg are militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism. That is the gunpowder. And as long as it's contained within the powder keg, it's safe. But as soon as this guy gets shot, Austrian Franz Ferdinand, that's going to be the spark that makes the powder keg go boom. Right? So the assassination of Franz Ferdinand is the thing that's really going to blow up all of these things that have been simmering in Europe for a really long time, right? So the question becomes, should the United States enter the war? And this kind of goes back and forth for a while. A lot of people say, yeah, absolutely we should. Other nations are saying, no, this is too much. This is not our conflict. So there are some factors on each side. So first is isolation, a factor supporting neutrality. A lot of Americans are saying, look, this is a European conflict. This is not our business. We don't need to go to war. We don't need to lose our men for something like Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Who is he, right? It doesn't matter. So this is just a European thing. We need to stay out of it, right? On the other side, we have a lot of economic ties with Europe, particularly with France and Britain. We trade with them. We get loans from them. They get loans from us. And so if Britain and France go to war, that's going to hurt our economy, right? If they can't trade with us anymore, that's going to be a problem. So we should go to war to support these allies that we have, because that's going to be supporting our own economic policies. Well, on the other hand, why are we going to go to war for that? Like a lot of people saying, I'm going to lose my son over this. That's not a good enough reason, right? I don't care about protecting investors. It's not a good enough reason for me to want to go to war. But the main real issue is unrestricted submarine warfare. So in 1914, Germany makes this promise. They say, okay, United States, you're neutral. So here's our pledge. It's called the Sussex Pledge. We're going to promise not to attack U.S. merchant ships, right? So you guys are good. You don't have to worry about getting attacked by our submarines. Well, a lot of British and French ships realized that American ships were safe. So a lot of times what the British ships would do is they would fly American flags to pretend to be American ships. And when the Germans realized this was happening, they said, well, actually, we got to start firing on ships that carry American flags because we don't know who they are anymore. So they violate this. Sometimes they get British ships. Sometimes they get American ships. Great example of that is the sinking of the Lusitania. So the Lusitania was an American passenger vessel. It was actually a British passenger vessel, but it was sailing from New York to Ireland. There were about 2,000 people on board this ship, including a great number of Americans. The Lusitania was also rumored to be carrying weapons, right? So this ship gets just off the coast of Ireland. They're actually 30 minutes from landing in Ireland, when a German U-boat, which is the term for submarine, surfaces and fires a torpedo into the Lusitania. The ship sinks in less than 15 minutes. It was so close that people on the coast could see the ship sinking, but it was so far away that they could not get enough people there in time to rescue the passengers. Of the passengers, a good number of them died, including 128 American citizens. So this is really going to incite a lot of violence for a lot of Americans, because now the war is home, right? But that's not enough for some people. It is not until a telegram is intercepted when Germany proposes an alliance with Mexico, basically saying, hey, Mexico, you know how the Americans took a bunch of land from you in the 1800s? If you will fight the Americans, then with our dime, we'll pay for it. But if you'll fight them, we'll support you in getting that land back. It's called the Zimmerman Note. So this telegram is kind of the final straw, right? If you think about it, like, Americans are not going to be good with this. So just a couple images here. So this one kind of is the submarine warfare. Subs were really scary at this time because radar had not been invented yet. So you didn't really know when a sub was coming or where it was. So that was very kind of scary for people. The Lusitania, look here, it's 1,200 people dead. Again, 128 of them were Americans. And this is the Zimmerman notes. It's a telegram that's sent in 1917. It says, on the 1st of February, we, the Germans, intend to begin submarine warfare unrestricted. We're not going to, it doesn't matter what flag you're flying. We're going to fire on everybody, right? We want to keep the United States neutral. However, we know that it's probably not going to happen. So we propose on the following basis an alliance with Mexico, that we shall make war together and together make peace. We shall give general financial support, and it is understood that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. So basically, again, you help us keep the Americans at bay, we'll help you get some of their land. When this telegram gets back to Congress, it is the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Americans are not going to put up with this. And it is not long late afterwards that the United States decides that they are going to declare war. And they declare war on April 2nd, 1917. So if you read the speech by Wilson, Wilson makes it very clear that we're going to war not to show how big and bad we are, not to say that the America's the best, but he says that we're going to war because Germany is violating human rights, right? And it's our job to protect those rights. We must put away excited feeling. Our motive will not be revenge or the assertion of physical might, but only the vindication of right, of human right, of which we are only a single champion. We're not doing this because America is the best. We're doing this to preserve human rights, right? And that is why America is going to go to war. So this kind of wraps up the causes of the war and how we got involved. Up next, we're going to look at kind of how the war was fought and what it looked like on the home front. So I'll see you in the next video.